Ferrari left the Belgian Grand Prix sprint race with mixed feelings and results that fell short of expectations. In the world of Formula One, every detail and technical decision can prove decisive. And during the car setup phase on Friday at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, something clearly did not go according to plan for the Maranello-based team. The Italian outfit opted for a risky compromise that ultimately failed to deliver the desired outcome. The SF25 car appeared to be relatively well balanced in general handling, but the chosen car setup was far too extreme, with the configuration focused almost entirely on maximizing top speed along the long straights of Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps and Stavelot. This technical approach ended up significantly limiting the overall performance capabilities of the car throughout the race. Both Scuderia Ferrari drivers, and especially seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, struggled to manage excessive temperature buildup in the tire compounds and had considerable difficulty rotating the car effectively in the slower, more technical sections of the circuit. Ferrari was limited by setup, which led to rear instability and lack of rotation in corners. At the start of the sprint race, Monegasque driver Charles Leclerc managed to gain a position on McLaren's Lando Norris, taking full advantage of a better racing line under heavy braking. However, Charles Leclerc pushed his tires too aggressively in the opening laps of the race and experienced a noticeable and progressive drop in performance after the fourth lap. That was the moment when Lando Norris reclaimed the position from the Ferrari driver. By the conclusion of the short sprint race, Charles Leclerc was losing approximately 0.6 of a second per lap on average to the leading group of frontrunners. The limiting factor for both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton's car seemed to stem from the rear section of the vehicle, which was running slightly too high and therefore suffered from elevated operating temperatures. As a consequence, both Ferrari drivers had to actively manage the overheating of the tire tread surface after just a few laps into the sprint. Their lap times began to improve slightly as the race progressed, but the underlying thermal issue remained a persistent factor. These excessive temperatures appear to be directly linked to the use of overly aggressive camber angles on the tire sidewalls. While this configuration allows for faster and more efficient tire warm-up during the early stages of a stint, it ultimately compromises overall race pace and consistency during longer runs. Lewis Hamilton in particular struggled more while running in the back of the midfield. The experienced British driver reported specific difficulties with rotating the car in the low-speed corners, along with a general lack of rear-end mechanical grip. Furthermore, the presence of long DRS trains, which is a common issue at Spa-Francorchamps, complicated tire temperature management for Lewis Hamilton, as he was unable to get clean airflow or execute overtakes with ease. As a result, on the cool-down lap after the sprint race, the Briton received an unusual request from his race engineer, Riccardo Adami, who asked the British driver to maintain a high speed on the in-lap in order to cool the car by increasing airflow and facilitating air convection to reduce internal temperatures. At the front of the field, reigning world champion Max Verstappen once again delivered one of his signature masterclass performances at the start. The Red Bull Racing driver overtook Australian Oscar Piastri on the very first lap with a bold and decisive move under braking at turn 5. Max Verstappen cleverly made full use of hybrid power deployment on the long straights, managing to sustain a race pace that was extremely close to that of both McLaren drivers while keeping them behind throughout the sprint. Once again, the Red Bull team from Milton Keynes demonstrated their technical excellence by choosing a low downforce setup that allowed them to manage tire temperatures effectively in the twisty and demanding middle sector while achieving superior top speeds in the high-speed sectors of the circuit. Charles Leclerc struggled with corner entry late in the race. A detailed analysis of the tire degradation chart clearly highlights the difficulties experienced by Charles Leclerc in managing his tire compounds, both in the early stages of the Belgian sprint race and during the final laps. After being overtaken by Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc was forced to reduce his pace significantly in order to lower the temperature levels at the rear of the car. In the final phase of the race, the Monegasque driver also suffered from substantial understeer through the middle of the corners, which compromised his ability to maintain a competitive pace. In contrast, Lewis Hamilton's lap times were more inconsistent and fluctuated considerably, primarily due to the constant traffic and slower cars positioned ahead of him that obstructed his ability to run clean laps and push to the limit. Meanwhile, at the front of the race, tire degradation per lap for the leading drivers was minimal. Telemetry data analysis of the lap time data for McLaren driver Lando Norris clearly illustrates the true performance potential of the McLaren MCL39. After completing his overtake on Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris consistently lapped about 0.3 of a second faster than the leading pair ahead of him. This further underlines the significance and brilliance of Max Verstappen's start, without which a 1-2 finish for the McLaren team could have been a strong possibility at the end of the sprint. The Ferrari engineers and technicians used the sprint race session as a valuable testing opportunity in order to better understand how to optimize the performance of their recently introduced rear suspension architecture, especially under extreme setup conditions. During the short break between the sprint race and the qualifying session for the main Grand Prix, Ferrari's technical department and engineers focused on working with the car's ride height settings and suspension stiffness. The objective was to modify the overall car setup to enhance the efficiency of the updated floor, the revised rear suspension layout, and the performance of the rear-end aerodynamic platform. The technical data collected from this experimental approach, which was basically conducted in real race conditions, will likely be extremely important for the Ferrari engineers and technicians moving forward, as it will provide deeper insights into how far the engineers can push extreme car setups before the performance starts to degrade. Even though the results obtained in the sprint race were far from impressive, the information gathered could prove essential for upcoming race weekends, particularly when the Maranello team must make strategic decisions between maximizing straight-line speed and achieving a well-balanced car for the entire race distance. As Formula One continues to evolve with increasingly complex development strategies, teams are often required to make difficult choices between outright performance and long-term progress. The sprint format, while competitive in nature, also provides a unique opportunity for experimentation under race conditions. For Ferrari, the Belgian Grand Prix sprint served as a valuable testing ground to evaluate key components, particularly the newly revised rear suspension and the effects of an extreme low downforce setup. Despite the short-term performance limitations seen in both Charles Leclerc's and Lewis Hamilton's race pace, the data collected could play a vital role in shaping the team's development path for the remainder of the 2025 season. Learning how the SF25 reacts to aggressive configurations will help the technical department make more informed decisions about future setups, aerodynamic upgrades, and tire strategies. With other teams like Red Bull and McLaren showing strong pace and consistency, Ferrari will need to extract every possible advantage from these test-like situations. While results in sprint races do carry championship points, the long-term value of setup understanding and component evaluation may prove even more important for a team aiming to return to the top step of the podium on a regular basis.